And a good evening on a Friday to whoever's there watching already. Um, I scheduled this and then I went live, so I'm hoping that this is going out rather than having a double hit on YouTube, which I will check now, so if you'll bear with me for a second. Well, I can see that I'm live. And it does appear that this is what's happening right now. Okay. If you'll bear with me for a second. I think I've got it. Maybe eventually I'll get to the point where I'm a little more professional and prepared, but today it's not that day. Um, Today is. It was a weird week. It was a very quiet week at work. My boss had a bunch of things going on, so she was out. And mind you, my job is pretty autonomous, so I'm doing my own thing and I don't have to necessarily worry about whether my boss approves it or not. But in this particular week, there was actually a day where I had to be in lieu of boss and run a meeting, which went well. And the boss was out, and then the boss was supposed to be back, and the boss broke her wrist, and we were talking about it today. We're like, we need to wrap her in bubble wrap, and she's too stubborn and hard headed and won't let us. And yeah, I think there's a reason I like this lady, but so I have had this really quiet week at work. I've managed to make art every day, which it's been a while since I managed to miss a day of art anyway. And even days that I have missed, it's been scheduled and thought through, not I just don't have the spoons. And this is probably a good thing. It means I'm getting to a point where I'm not as day to day not knowing what's going on, which is definitely an improvement. It helps to have Sanford here. It helps to have kind of a steady routine. Now I just need to work other things back into the routine. And yeah, the art, I'm working on illustrating the Retell Saga, which is one of the Law Dog stories. A couple weeks back now, I'd had a conversation with him about how well Chewini was doing, and Task Force Chewini is still doing fairly well, and there's still time to buy it for Christmas. Hint, hint. Hello. So, Task Force Chewini was selling well enough that I suggested to Law Dog that I do it again, because my point at this thing with doing the illustrated books for Law Dog is that it's less work for him, if not no work at all. In this case, I need a little bit of art direction from him, having never been to Nigeria. And no, I'm not taking a research trip. Um, but it gives him a little bit of income that he basically doesn't have to really do anything for. So, and it amuses me because it gives me something every day to work on for art prompts. Okay, granted, yesterday's art was, I was dared. I was dared to do that art. And if you're not on MeWe, you didn't see the full glory of the camel. Um, so yeah, if you find my art group on MeWe, you'll get to see the whole thing. And that might wind up in the back of the Retell Saga book as its finale illustration that's not connected to the story itself. Today I illustrated Fido, the frog, who's not spelled like you would think it was spelled, which I thought was kind of funny, and I may have to do something with that in the illustration too. But tomorrow's illustration will involve Fido trying to cram an entire ball python into his mouth. And in the course of looking up illustration reference photos for Fido, because Fido is an African giant frog. Now, I like frogs, but in all my life I've lived with little frogs. And as a matter of fact, for years I hunted tree frogs, trying to find the little bitty beepers that are so loud in the spring if you live in the certain parts of the United States. The little spring peepers are the herald of warm weather, and they have these amazingly loud trilling cries. Actually, if you look back at my YouTube channel a couple years now, you'll find a video, and the star of the video is actually Blue, one of my mother's barn cats. But if you listen to the video, it's me, and I was literally like sitting next to a pond with spring peepers calling all around me, and it is really loud. But on that particular little expedition, Blue and I managed to find a tree frog in a clump of grass. So I have still photos somewhere of little tiny tree frogs with a St. Andrew's cross on their back. So I have a thing about frogs. Hi, Dad. And I mean, spring peepers will always be my favorite frog, and I'm pretty sure they don't have them down here in Texas. I know they have frogs because I've seen them when I was out doing my little hiking in the area near a swamp and a pond, and I've seen and heard frogs. One of them sounds just like a little mouse. It's like you stepped on a mouse and it goes eek, and then it jumps in the water. It took me a couple of minutes to realize that no, it was not a mouse jumping in the water, it was a frog. But the African giant frogs will eat amazing things. I found a reference photo of an African giant frog with what looks an awful lot like a rat, although maybe a small rat, crammed into its mouth. And just the little rat's head is sticking out, and his face has kind of got that startled "oh no," because he's going down. The frog's gonna swallow him whole, because that's what frogs do. They eat anything they can fit in their mouth, and they can fit an amazing amount in their mouth when they're the size of Fido and they're bigger than 2 footballs put together. So I have been having so much fun with the illustrations for this book. Drawing Retell, drawing cowardly lions and hiding hyenas, and I have some art direction from Law Dog on, as a Kiwi, the African warlord that was giving them problems, and met his just desserts in the story. And so he's, I forget which page I'm on at this point. I'm on page like 6 or 7. So there are 23 pages of illustrations in the Retell Saga. So it's going to be a little longer than Task Force Chewini was, not by a whole lot, just a few more pages. And that's going to be probably 3 months to get those illustrations done, because I'm not doing Retell Saga illustrations every day, and I'm also doing marginalia, so I'm doing little illustrations for the sides, things like the boys carrying burdens of palm fronds bigger than they are, and a cartoonish Retell with buzzsaws for paws. I drew that one the other day. So those will be marginalia. They'll be in with the text on the facing page, coloring book on one side, text on the other side, yeah, no, it's a really fun project. The problem with what I've been doing is that I am doing so much in the way of illustrations, and I just realized that I had forgotten something. I need to do that. So this is my other problem, is that I have more stuff going on than I can keep in my head at one time, because squirrel. And I am working on some organization things to try and get myself on track, keep myself on track. One of those is that I now have a business email account that I'm having clients send me stuff there so that I can keep track of just the business stuff without having to be swamped in my personal email box, because that gets all the emails. So that should help. I've also got a paper journal because sometimes those work better for me than doing everything online, and I'm trying to keep lists in that. So hopefully I won't lose anything. I probably will, but I'm trying not to. But I have book covers. I've delivered one final book cover day before yesterday, I think. I have a really big set of book covers. I'm doing a recover project for a client, and I will probably be working on those actually after this call today. And so yeah, personal projects, just the Retell Saga right now. I have started writing, but I'm being super slow on it, The Case of the Missing Links, which is the sequel to The Case of the Perambulating Hat Rack. And I think the reason I'm writing that one instead of some of my other projects is that it's zany. It's just kind of off the wall. I don't have to worry about, well, not too much anyway, what was oh no, Doug, I was afraid of that. I thought I had checked and I didn't have 2 streams going, but now I don't know how to fix that. Yeah. So, evidently I did not get this scheduled the way it should have gotten scheduled. And of course, I had checked and I didn't have 2 streams going. And I'm letting Mom know. Okay. Yeah. Today is not the day for me to be organized and professional. It's just the day for me to be chaotic and all over the place. And that is the goofiest looking thumbnail. So my work day ended. I leave work and I get to, after work today, I was doing all of the week's grocery shopping. And by week's grocery shopping, I mean next week, because we actually don't have a lot going on Sunday, which is nice. I'm hoping to have a down day. But tomorrow, we're going to be going up north to the writers group. And tonight I had the live stream, but I was informed that we could not put off grocery shopping until Sunday because bread and milk and eggs. And so then my son gets involved and he texts me this grocery list. And it's a long grocery list. So I scheduled a pickup from the market so I could pull up and they would load it in my car. But he also wanted me to go to the Asian market, which does not do that. And he wanted me to pick up some things. Now, I like going to the Asian market. It's fun. I don't know what half the stuff is, but I can usually figure it out.
She buys it anyhow.
Yes, as Sanford points out, I buy it whether I know what it is or not. And then I figure out what it is and I try to use it. So, what the boy wanted me to do was pick up some fish or shrimp. Well, the shrimp that I saw at the Asian market today it was all frozen and it wasn't the best price, so I'm like, I could get that elsewhere. But they did have some lovely salmon steaks, so I wound up with salmon. And he also wanted me to get vegetables so we could do spring rolls. And spring rolls are so there are egg rolls and spring rolls and summer rolls. If you're not familiar, if you are, sorry, I'm going to explain it again. Egg rolls are deep fried and usually filled with like shredded cabbage and pork. Summer rolls are similar, but they're a different kind of wrapping. They're a rice paper rather than a wheat based pastry. So, summer rolls are also deep fried like egg rolls. Similar kind of filling, kind of cabbage, kind of whatever's left over. Spring rolls, however, are not deep fried and they are essentially a little bit of meat cooked because they're not actually, spring rolls aren't actually cooked. And it's almost like a bit of salad inside a rice paper wrapper. And the rice paper in this case gets dipped into hot water and it starts to absorb that water, and you put your fillings in and you roll it all up and wrap it and then you eat it, and it's like finger food salad. It's fun. My son has recently discovered this and has started to ask for spring roll makings. So I went to the Asian market and I bought radish sprouts. And yes, I know I can make them, Dad, but I don't have time and I would just kill them. So I got radish sprouts and I was looking for watercress because that would be really fun. And they were out of watercress today. So instead I got some nice fresh mint. We have fresh basil and shucky darn, I can't remember what the other thing was. I got some Persian cucumbers. So we will do spring rolls with, I have tinned eel, and we will do eel and salady spring rolls. And alongside that, we will have either homemade ramen or hot pots. The boy has been wanting to do hot pots. So I bought fish balls today. And fish balls are just exactly what they sound like. They're meatballs, but they're made with fish and paste. The ones I got are actually shrimp based because my husband hates anything fish, with the exception of the salmon steaks. So I also got fresh pancit noodles, which are very close to ramen noodles. I know that ramen noodles are a thing by themselves, but I haven't been able to figure out which of the noodles at the Asian market are ramen noodles. Pancit noodles look close and they're fresh noodles, so they'll be fun to play with. So we'll probably do so I actually like lutefisk. But I don't know how my son would feel about it. And Sanford is not in the same room right now, or you'd be hearing how he felt about it. But the fun thing about the Asian market is that I can go in there and I can get interesting ingredients and make weird and wonderful things out of it, and sometimes my family likes it and sometimes they don't, but I don't know about water chestnuts, Dad. I have not. I'll look at the Asian market and see if I have them intact. Usually when you see them they've already been peeled, so there's no point in trying to plant that. Oh, what did I see? Did I send you turmeric roots? Anyhow. Yes, Doug, I'm weird. You just noticed this? Gosh. So I had topics picked out. I will be darned if I can remember what most of the topics were. I'm looking, because I did write it down somewhere. Oh, right, I was going to talk about Shetland Sheep. So, on Jim and Ian's live stream, which you can go... Well, fish balls are not... I mean, they're meatballs, but they're Asian-style meatballs, so it's different. So, my apologies to Great Granny DeMarco. Dad, don't eat Hakarl. and when you're in Norway. Anyhow, so what I was going to talk about was if you look up old NFO and you find his channel, and you can go back and watch their live streams in the recorded version. The one that happened yesterday, which would be December 9th, 2021, is, among other things, it's the source of the art that I drew yesterday, which you can see in its full, unadulterated glory on MeWe. But they were talking about Shetland ponies and how evil Shetland ponies are. And no disagreement from me. I'm sure that there are nice Shetland ponies. There are exceptions to every rule in life. But most Shetland ponies are malevolent sofas. They are fat. They are mean. And, I mean, I'm talking as a girl who grew up with Mustangs because my parents kept adopting Mustangs. And we actually had Mustangs got returned to the BLM, the original BLM, not the current model of BLM, because they were untrainable. That's probably a whole nother story right there, and not really mine either. I might have to get my dad on here one of these days to tell stories other than just in the chat. So Shetland ponies are, I know they're not a nice thing, but the point was made, and it's a good one, that Shetlands are a product of their environment. The Shetland Islands are cold, wet, very rarely do they get sunshine, they're rocky, they're hostile environment. And I was thinking about it, and that makes sense. I can see why Shetland ponies turned out to be these hardened, bitter little souls. But then there are Shetland sheep. And I grew up with goats usually. But for a while when I was a teenager, I was an apprentice shepherdess. And we had friends that had a sheep farm. And, nobody likes either BLM. I'm aware of this, but BLM was who you worked with to adopt Mustangs. So, the sheep that we had were mostly Shetland Merino crosses, because the farm that was down from the road from us, who I wound up working with as a shepherdess, had Shetlands and Merinos. And they weren't supposed to be Shetland Merino crosses. However, Shetland sheep are bouncy. And the Shetland Rams managed to get in with the Merino ewes, and every year there were some Shetland Merino cross lambs born. So, because those were of no use to our friends, we wound up with them, and they were very nice sheep. So here's the thing. The Shetland sheep are not like sheep. They're more like goats. Hence the bouncy rams, to be honest with you. And Shetland sheep are somewhat more intelligent than, several orders of intelligent more than the Merinos, or most other sheep that I've met. And so the Shetland sheep thank you all for reminding me. See, this is why I've started writing it down, because if I don't write it down, it doesn't happen. And it never happened, and it existed. But yeah, so Shetland sheep, not dumb, not like Merinos, and very sneaky and very persistent. So yeah, there's something about the Shetland Islands. The breeds of animals that come from there are something different. I was trying to remember the other. Oh, right. So goats and jumping, also sheep and jumping, because the Shetland Rams would go over any fence to get to the ewes. We had a pregnant goat, and gosh, this is when Dad was still in the military and we were still in Oregon, so I was fairly young. Goats are very much herd animals, and if you bottle raise and milk a goat and just hand rear them in general, they consider their people family, their family, they're part of their herd. So we had a goat that was imminently pregnant, and Mom will probably correct me on this because I'm pretty sure she had twins just a couple days after this incident. But this goat took a 6-foot paddock fence at a standing leap because her people family were in the backyard having a barbecue and had not included her. So, I, as I recall, the goat was allowed to stay with her people because Mom would worry she would injure herself if she did that again. And we did have a goat that injured herself trying to get to people. We were in my grandmother's living room, and the people family are inside sitting on couches and whatnot and talking, and there was one couch that was backed up to a plate glass window, and the goat that we thought was tethered out there decided that she really wanted to be inside with the people and didn't understand glass, so she leaped to clear the couch and the people so that she could land in the middle of the people and be with her people, and came right through a plate glass window. And I think my poor grandfather had a little bit more PTSD after that, but. Which reminds me, the PTSD anthology is doing, I think it's doing fairly well. We would like to see it do better. It is getting some amazing reviews. The public reviews are one thing. I'm also getting to see some private stuff back channel that is just, the stories in the anthology make me cry. The feedback I'm getting makes me cry. I am a soppy, but it's one of the things that I'm seeing as a theme from the people that are reading the anthology, and this is one I'm referring to is called Can't Go Home Again, and right now it's on Amazon, and it's available in paper. There are currently no plans to produce it as an audiobook, sorry about that, but audiobooks are beyond my budget right now. I checked earlier today, it has 27 reviews. We are pushing hard to get 50 reviews on it, because at that point Amazon starts to notice it and include it in algorithms. So if you have read it and not yet reviewed it, please do so. That would mean a lot to not only the authors in the anthology, but we want to see this anthology get into the hands of more people. The theme that we're seeing in reviews is that people are finding it very useful as a tool towards showing the road home, showing hope, showing ways to cope with situations that resonate with them. And not all PTSD is military related. This particular anthology is military centric, but not all of the stories are military centric. And it's got some really profound stories in it. There's stories in it that you will read and just find entertaining, and I think that it's probably different for every person. There are stories in it, my grandmother's story in it gets me every time, and I have gotten feedback that there are some stories in there that people had to skip because it was just too raw, too close to their own experiences. And really, usually when I'm talking about my fiction, it's escapist, and it's light, and it's fluffy. There's a reason most of my art is cute, and most of my fiction is sweetness and light. And it's because I know that path back from being broken is very difficult. And that was what I wanted to do with this anthology. I wanted to take that path and model it, and give a way for others to contribute to that. Because I'm only one person, I'm only one set of experiences, and by taking a dozen different people and distilling their uh, processes and that kind of thing, and tools, all of those different minds working together is far more powerful than anything I can do on my own. So I guess I'm just it's just one of those things of, um, if you are so inclined, share it on your social media. If you have read and you can leave a review, and I know some of you in this chat are too close to it to be able to do that, but if you can, then please do so. The other thing too is that if you know of somebody that you think can use this anthology and you can't afford to give them a gift yourself, reach out to me, please, and I will take care of that. If you know of somebody that would be willing to give it an honest review, I'm happy to send a review copy as well. And that there's some things in that going back channels that we're working on. I'd also, if you haven't already listened to the Blasters and Blades podcast, it's a little quirky. It's military veteran centric because it's run by some military vets, so a little bit of salty language, and a lot of fun, a lot of silliness. But they have done two episodes focusing on the anthology. One where they interviewed Colonel Christopher Denote, and myself, and another one where they interviewed Jim Curtis, old NFO, and Jim Curtis's handle is old NFO, to be clear, and Law Dog, and that one's a lot of fun to listen to. But we are we're working on promoting it. I think this is the hardest I've ever promoted a book. It means a lot to me, and I will push this where I wouldn't necessarily push my own stuff, because my stuff, I'm writing for my retirement. I'll promote eventually, but right now, this one's important, and this time of year is brutal for anyone that's dealing with PTSD, that's dealing with separation from their family and home, and that separation isn't always a physical separation. It's sometimes it's a separation of the mind, and I'm being distracted because there's a phone call, so I will have to see if that's something that's going to be urgent. My pardons, because I am going to stop here and make a quick text. I can't do two things at once. So, anyhow, I get sidetracked. Okay, not urgent. I can deal with that later. So, sidetracking over. So, writer's block is a complicated thing, and where I'm at right now is work requires me to do a lot of reading and research. And in fact, I would say that I probably spend the majority of my time at work researching, which is a lot of reading, and so I haven't been reading outside of work a whole lot. I'm working on a really interesting book right now, Special Forces Berlin, and it is it's a kind of it's not really what I was expecting when I got into it, because I was thinking it was going to be more about espionage, but it's kind of doing the history behind Berlin and the Berlin Wall and the antagonism between the Soviets and the Americans on a fairly low level to begin with. I mean, I knew most of. There's some little details that I didn't know, and there's some really interesting, humorous stories. Because that's one thing about this book that I'm reading, is that it's more about the history, and he gets a little lighthearted at times, but he really doesn't get into anything grim. There's a little dark humor, but it's not like super black humor. Um, I'm about halfway through it, so it may change, but it's basically the history of the Special Forces detachment in Berlin from the early 1950s through until the fall of the Berlin Wall. So interesting, not really what I needed for the book that I'm trying to write. Um, so I'm going to wind up reading something else for that, but I'm not reading, and when I don't read, I tend to have trouble with writer's block. And I don't have to be reading fiction, and as a matter of fact, reading fiction can sometimes block me in weird ways. So part of the reason that I tend to read a lot of mysteries or thriller-esque things, and I say thriller-esque loosely because it's not really the right genre, but because I do that, that lets my brain go on the science fiction or the fantasy rather than if I'm reading science fiction or fantasy, it oozes into what I'm writing, and I try not to do that. So I tend not to read in the genre that I'm writing in, which means at the moment that I'm really not reading any fiction, so I'm not writing at all. I'm not exactly sure that's what it is. I think it probably has more to do with the fact that my job is eating my brain. And that's not a bad thing, because I really like my job. I like what I'm doing right now. I like that I'm getting to learn so much. I love that I'm given free rein to, I mean, obviously we have stuff that we're needing to do for clients. Yes, Dad, I will make sure that you get a copy. But a lot of what I'm doing, and I'm supposed to be doing, is developing new ideas, new products, and I'm doing some creative writing with that because I'm also writing marketing copy. As a scientist, it gets a little twitchy because I'm like, well, this does this and this and this, but as a scientist, I'm going, it isn't that groundbreaking. So that's definitely creative writing. I want to try and do more science writing with the work stuff, but I've got to talk to my boss about that before I actually start putting that out in public. So, but writing fiction is moving slowly. Yes, we did find a butter source. It may not be our final butter source, but because the pricing isn't that great, but the pricing is marginally better to buy 55-pound blocks of butter. Okay, so we're talking about a box, cube of butter, 55 pounds of butter to go. But that's better than I was trying to think through the fact that we'd all be standing out there and compounding, shucking butter a stick at a time into the vat. Yeah. The most important thing that we're going to be able to get from the butter supplier that I found is documentation. And we have to have the documentation, which we would not get if we just went to the store and bought butter. So I am relieved. I have managed it. Oh, that was a riot. And that's the fun thing about this job, is I'm just doing all these weird, crazy, different things. I mean, this week Um, this week I made a shampoo bar. It's like a bar of soap, only you use it to shampoo your hair. And it was, as a matter of fact, the last thing I used to shampoo my hair. And don't blame it for the frizziness at the moment, because that's because I shampooed the hair yesterday and I haven't done it yet today. Um, no, I am not carving my bar of shampoo. I need to test the bar of shampoo to see how long it lasts in the shower, because if it dissolves too quickly, I have to reformulate it with different materials to make it harder. Because it has to be it has to be right in the sweet spot. So, Dad, the era for the research for the book is going to be called 10 Pigeons, and it is not science fiction or fantasy. It is straight up modern day mystery with a healthy dollop of Cold War era espionage. The main character gets called in to investigate some mysterious circumstances surrounding the death of a very old woman who was involved first with the OSS and later, probably not directly, with the CIA. And I remember Dale, Dad. I believe I met him at least once. Um, but my main character is investigating this woman and trying to yeah, unfortunately there is a lag between the chats and the live stream itself. So I have no intention of carving the butter. We will be handling it with proper aseptic procedure. Um, I have butter sitting on my bench at work in my lab because I'm doing a bench test to see how long it will take it to go rancid at room temperature. I am trying to, I'm trying to get an idea of the stability of butter so that I know when we can order the raw materials to produce the client batches, because we're going to be ordering like 100, 200 pounds of butter at whack. Oh, so yeah, 10 Pigeons is my next project. I've written quite a bit of it, but I hit a point when I realized that I did not know enough to. Bye, Becky. Thanks for coming and watching some of it. I will see you next week. I hit a point with this book where I realized I had to do a lot more research because, oddly enough, I'm familiar with the OSS and some of the shenanigans that people like Virginia Hall got up to during World War II. But after World War II, there was still a lot going on, and I know some of the history and stories, but they're mostly very deep into Russia. So I'm trying to remember the name of the book. There was a book I read that was basically the memoirs of an American who was in Moscow, and they were doing spying. It wasn't his main thing that he was in Moscow for, and I think he got PNG'd because of what he was doing on the side. But so I've read that, and I'm familiar with some of the history and bits and pieces, but I wanted to get a little bit more history so I could do this book justice. What I'm kind of playing with the idea is that the little old lady who has died just before the beginning of the book, that she was an importer-exporter. So she did interior design, and she had like art and antiques and collectibles that she brought into the US and sold to clients. because one of the weird things that I was interested in a few years ago was art history and art forgery in particular. And there's some really excellent books out there by a fellow that used to be the head guy at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I'll have to look him up because I can't remember his name right now. But he wrote a couple of books that are just, they're fun. And he talks a lot about art and smuggling and art forgery and detecting forgery and how many pieces are in museums that are forgeries and the museums won't admit it. But because of having read his books and a couple of others in the same theme, I kind of get this idea that it would probably have been a thing that would be a way to smuggle information in and out of different countries. So that's kind of where I'm going with this lady, and I haven't done enough research yet to really have decided what her role is, but I'm having fun with it, and I have not spoiled the plot because this is not actually the primary plot of the book. It drives the primary plot, but this is subtexts and things that are going on under the surface, and I don't know. You know me. If I'm going to research, I'm going to dive all the way down the rabbit hole. So, and Jim, who chipped in the thing, and we're up to 27 reviews in the anthology. But Jim had also offered me a book that he's got on the Venona files. Verona files? I may have gotten that wrong. So I may go through that as well. I think it'll be a little dry for what I wanted to do, but I might be able to pick some interesting tidbits out of it. And I have, yes, art is, actually a lot of the major art deals these days are money laundering. It's an open secret, and it's part of the reason that when people talk to me about, oh, you should sell your art, you should get in galleries, I'm like, probably not. It's not all art sales or money laundering, don't get me wrong on that. But the really, really big art sales, there's a lot going on. I had it right, it is Venona. The really big art sales, I mean, the whole thing with Hunter Biden's $500,000 artwork, that's his name. That has nothing to do with the quality of the work, which honestly is not the worst. I have seen worse. There are some postmodern stuff that I have seen a dog's breakfast that was better than some of the postmodern art. I can remember my son's reaction. So the Dayton Art Institute, which is in Dayton, Ohio, we went there a couple of times, the kids and I. I went there a few times by myself, not nearly as much as I should have given how close it was. And it was really kind of cool because it was laid out in chronological order, the galleries at the Dayton Art Institute are. So you could start with pre-Columbian art of the Americas and kind of weave your way through Japan, and they had an amazing Asian collection there. That was actually the first time I went, was for research for a class I was taking on the art of China, Japan, and Korea. But I digress. And so medieval stuff in Europe, and then you end up in this one big room that is postmodern art. And the first time I took my son, he would have been about 11 years old, and now there was some postmodern stuff in there that was actually kind of fun. There was like a found piece collage that was bright and shiny and very magpie nest, and it was actually kind of fun, and I mean, it looked like something a child had put together. But one of the pieces of the art is a giant strip of brown felt. And I say giant strip as in it's probably 20 feet long. It's been folded in half. The ends are pinned up at the top end, and it just kind of hangs down and folds. And that's it. And it's really heavy brown felt, and not like the nicest made. It's got slubs and stuff in it. And that's the whole art installation. And my son walks over to this and he goes, "This makes no sense. What's the point?" And I'm like, yeah. And I think, I mean, there's another great book, and I'm trying to remember the exact name of it, but it's basically Who Murdered Art. And it talks about the postmodernism movement and how we went from art where it was approachable, that not everybody would see the same thing when they walked up to the piece of art, but art that had layers. And a lot of this postmodern art, you can walk up to it and it makes no sense. Okay, the one where the guy took like $50,000 from the Netherlands art gallery and didn't deliver any art and said that that was the statement, I gotta admit, that guy, I'm not sure it was smart, but he made a point with his art. And it made global news, so he's now a famous artist who doesn't actually make art. And there are some great artists working these days, but you're not going to see them in most art galleries, and which is sad because...
Or on college campuses where they pay huge amounts for really nasty statuary.
It's... I just realized I hadn't moved the microphone, so hopefully nobody said anything about not being able to hear me. So if I'm a little cynical about selling my art, that's why. I do cute. And as I said earlier in the thing, I do cute for a reason. And that brings us back to the PTSD anthology. I opted not to get autobiographical with my story in the PTSD anthology. I am being asked if I'll do another one. If I do another one, and that's a big if, it will focus more on some of the stuff that I dealt with. So it'll be not military-centric PTSD, but complex PTSD, secondary PTSD. And again, that's an if I do another anthology on this theme. This one was a learning experience. There's some things I would go back and do differently. There are some issues with this anthology that I am still not able to fix because... Ugh. Yeah, the camels... Okay, so I will explain. I posted my art yesterday with, I'm not even going to try to explain this, but I will explain. There was an article about camels. Let me back up a step. Evidently, in Saudi Arabia and countries in that surrounding area, they have beauty pageants for goats and camels. And in Old NFO's live stream yesterday, this was brought up and it broke Law Dog and Old NFO. And I was dared by somebody who's now in chat, Joshua. I was dared to draw a Botox camel with duck lips. So I drew two versions. And technically it's the same version. One's been altered with the digital editing. But so have most of the duck lips on Instagram. They've been altered by digital editing. So I was in the spirit of the camels. Yeah, no, I drew camels in lipstick with duck lips. Because the camels in the beauty contest got kicked out for having Botox injections and fillers and yeah. The Botox was in more than the humps. And also they were using things like rubber bands as fillers, which cannot be good because that will break down. I'm kind of sad for the poor camels. The price that you pay for beauty is sometimes painful. So I drew the camels. Right, they're around the eyes to reduce the wrinkles because not only female humans are worried about wrinkled eyes. I make an eye serum for that. Silicone inserts only... It wasn't just silicone. They were using rubber bands and other stuff, and I don't even know, and I don't think I want to know, because frankly, it's bad enough as it is. Oh. Yeah, Ian's reaction to the camel drawings, because he saw the one that I put on Facebook, and I put the one on Facebook that is more cute and not quite as grotesque as the other one. And his response was, and I'm going to quote, "I was having a nice day. We were all having a nice day. Why did you do this?" So I warned him not to look at MeWe. Well, folks, I am looking forward to finishing up with this book. I am looking forward to not carving the butter. But, I mean, the PTSD anthology, y'all should check that one out if you haven't already. And I will let you know next week how the fish balls came out in the ramen soup. And yes, Doug, I am weird. They're shrimp fish balls. That's not that bad, right? Oh. I am going to try and write more fiction this week. I think I managed 500 words last week, which I have been told that some people would be happy with 500 words, but this is me. I'm not happy. I want to do more stuff. Oh, and Christmas cards. So, if y'all don't have my address and want my address, let me know. But more to the point, if you ping me, not in the chat, don't put your address in the chat, but if you ping me privately and send me an address, I will send out a Christmas card. I had ordered Christmas cards made, and that looks like it's not happening for some reason, which I don't understand, but it's too late for me to fuss with it. But I have a random assortment of Christmas cards that are left over from other years, some of which are my art. And it's always possible I might get froggy and do some original pen and ink and send those out as Christmas cards. So if you would like something, ping me, give me your address, and I will send out Christmas cards this coming week. And Mom, I have sent Juniper a Christmas present. Pray forgive me when you get it. So, yeah, no, it's been fun. I'm going to try and figure out a way to make this into a conversation at some point where there's more than just me talking into the camera. I like how Jim and Ian do it on their live stream with having the two of them, so they have more of a conversational feel go. And since my dear first reader does not want to join me, and the little man's reaction to being invited was sheer horror, I'm going to have to find somebody to sit down with me and chit-chat. But until then, next week, I will see you. Same bat time, same bat channel. Mom, I love you. And I love my sister.